Hi, I'm Brian Young with ACO North America, and today I'm here with Scott Forsyth, who's going to help us understand better one of the best technologies on the market for dealing with grease management solutions for commercial kitchens. Hi, Scott. What can you tell me about the Goslin?
Hey, Brian, thanks for having me. Well, the Goslyn is essentially what we would call an automatic grease removal device.
Okay,
Very different to what maybe the industry knows as grease traps. You'll hear that term kind of being floated around.
that's what I call.
Yeah, grease trap.
Yeah,
Essentially something that's taking grease, holding it, and then, if you're in a kitchen, you usually got to come and pump it out. It's smelly, it's messy.
yeah.
This device kind of does it for you. It's always on. It's automatic. It's essentially skimming and removing the grease from the device, separating the grease out one end, and you're getting great fresh water out the other end.
That's amazing. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. I got a few questions for you, Scott.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm looking at this box, Scott, and it looks pretty simple in a lot of ways. How does this work? Is it considered a simple build? Tell me more about that.
Sure, and I think that word "simple" is exactly why this system is really loved in the industry. The technology with regards to this particular device is that it is a very, very simple element that helps skim the grease off the surface of the water. So, what do you think that looks like?
Kind of looks like a ping pong ball.
Yeah, it's not a ping pong ball. It's actually a very specific piece to how this system works. This ball itself is weighted precisely to sit between the interface of oil and grease.
Sounds sophisticated.
Yeah, well, it so really, as you have grease and water in emulsion, if you think about it, you're washing your dishes, your dishwasher's running, and all that grease and water dumps into the system.
It gets pretty nasty.
It's pretty nasty, but what does grease and water typically do, right?
Separate.
It separates, right? So as the water and the grease separate, so this ball will sit right at the interface between the two. And as the grease level builds, it will open up, essentially a port in the device that would allow grease to skim off and come out into a cassette on the one side of the device, and then water out of the other side of the device.
So the device will actually allow the grease to drain once it's reached a certain point.
Correct.
So it's kind of like mechanical intelligence.
It is mechanical intelligence, but the beauty is that you're not doing anything. It's just working all the
I
time.
like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
And it's simple, right? I mean, here's the thing with grease, when it congeals, it gets messy. Lots of moving parts. It's going to kind of gum up, kind of get in there, have to clean it. So the simpler the system, the much easier it is for the people working with devices and in the kitchens. And that's really, I think, one of the beauties of why people love the Goslyn.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. So let me ask you what you just mentioned there with regards to moving parts.
Mhm.
You said this one doesn't have moving parts.
It does not. The only real moving part in there is that ball as it sort of raises and sinks with regards to the amount of level of grease in the system. There are a couple things that you have to do with the system. I mean, when we say moving parts, we don't have mechanical moving parts. There's a basket. What you don't want in your system is a lot of food solids, things like that, because that's actually what causes a lot of the smells that you would typically find in things like grease traps.
So is it like when a piece of French fry goes down the
Yeah,
drain and makes its
exactly.
way?
Yeah, exactly. So you don't want that in your main
Okay.
cavity of the system. So yeah, you have this strainer you can pull out, do a quick dump.
No, it's pretty easy to get out of there.
Yeah, super simple. This kind of device on the end over here, really what it is a spring-loaded valve. You kind of open it, it flushes water. So if you've got things like fines, spices, you also don't want that in your oil. So that'll kind of flush it out, keep it nice and clean.
So it even gets spices out.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
amazing. Those are
Yeah.
really small particles.
Right, exactly. So yeah, so your all your kind of organics and debris are not sitting in your main cavity with all your oil. And then that's where all the separation. This is really the centerpiece, is where the magic happens for the device.
Okay. So then I have another question.
Sure.
In terms of capacity,
Yeah.
like how many gallons per minute are we talking about here? Like what size would I need for, let's say, a smaller kitchenette or dining room that's got 25 tables or 20
Yeah.
tables, and we're more of a fast food place
Sure.
versus if I'm a larger restaurant and there's all kinds of stuff happening, steaks and I don't know.
Yeah, all kinds of. Yeah, well, really. So, I mean, we have a number of different devices, different size capacities. Typically, it's based upon like gallons per minute of flow into the system, and that's really dictated by how many prep sinks you have. So, prep sink is like where you're actually like rinsing your dishes and things before it goes in, and then your dishwasher, right? So, for most average restaurants, maybe you have 2 or 3 prep sinks. You have a dishwasher. This unit over here, this is what we would call a GOS 40. It is a 10 gallon per minute device. We can go all the way up to 100 gallons a minute as well. So we can get some pretty sizable devices. Our smallest is a GOS 20, a little bit smaller footprint. You might find those in like real small, like let's say you're doing a food court, right? You've been to a food court?
Yeah, the malls.
Yeah,
sure.
malls. You have, they maybe have a little closet kitchen in the back. They're doing some rinsing.
Yeah.
So you need a little small unit. But yeah, so it really just depends on what you have going on in your kitchen. What's cool about Echo and what we're doing is that, we have some really sophisticated sizing calculators. So for the customer, they can go in onto websites.
So you can help me figure out exactly what I need for my situation.
Yeah, we can do all the maths for you and kind of help you size that unit pretty quickly. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you about one more thing. Especially, I've heard in California, there's a lot of regulations that are changing. New laws are coming into play.
Yeah.
So obviously, if I'm a restaurant owner or I have a commercial kitchen, that's going to be important to me to know about. What can you tell me about that with regards to Goslyn and how it works with those?
Sure.
Is it compliant with all the laws or most of the laws? Would it only work for some of us owners or for all kinds of owners?
Yeah, so most cities, agencies, and it's not just, say, California. It's all throughout the United States. Most large agencies will have something that will be dealing with what we call FOG, which is fats, oils, and greases, right?
Nice.
And, yeah, exactly. And so, let's be honest, city agencies don't want to be dealing with grease, lots of grease. I think I read a statistic that there was about, I don't know, an average of 16,000 pounds of grease that an average restaurant would release without a device like that down into your kind of your sewer systems. And if you think
you'd gum everything up, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would gum it up. It takes a lot of maintenance. And also all of that stuff has to end up at a processing facility, right? And then they have to deal with it. So really what the laws are doing are driving compliance back to the point source, right? Where is the grease collecting? And that's usually at the restaurant. And that's why these devices are, in most cases, required by law to have some way to manage your grease. Now, there's lots of different ways of doing it, like grease traps, in-grounds. Ours is a particular type of what we call automatic grease separated device. So it's always working, always on. But yeah, compliance is important. And in many cases, you can't open a restaurant without having some kind of grease management system in your commercial kitchen.
You said something else a moment ago that got me thinking. And I've seen city buses go by and they smell like French fries. Maybe you've heard of that. And I understand that some cities are buying grease.
Yeah.
And so, not that it's a huge revenue stream, but it's a new opportunity and it lets me get rid of grease without paying to get rid of it.
Sure.
I actually could get paid to get rid of my grease.
Yeah.
How does the Goslyn work in that space? Is the way the grease released at a high enough quality that happens? How does Goslyn fit into that picture?
That's a great question. Listen, there's definitely a push towards sort of more sustainable fuels. I think you might have all heard of biofuel, right? So, I read an article the other day, just, biofuel for aviation is a big sort of push, right? How do we essentially running, jet engines on grease?
On French fries?
But not all greases are made equal, right? Especially waste grease. What's really cool about Goslyn is that the grease that is coming off of the system is actually really pure, right? We separate about 98%.
Oh, wow.
Of the grease out of the water at a very low moisture content. So there's very little water actually in the grease. So there's kind of a saying, it's like grease is gold, meaning that actually the higher quality grease you can capture from these systems, the better it is for the refineries, and they pay more money for it. So it is. If you took like a traditional sort of big in-ground unit where you're just dumping all of your grease and your solids and your waste, that takes a lot more time to process, and it's not as valuable. So yeah, for sure, the grease and the oils that come out of the Goslyns is a much purer, higher quality oil. and it does translate to money for restaurant owners, cities, and agencies.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's important to think about, because even if something cost a few dollars less, and this
Yeah.
one would cost a few dollars
Yeah.
more, in the long run, I'd make more than that few dollars back on the side just selling my grease potentially.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. And you know, it's not just selling your grease. I mean, there's a sustainable piece to this too, right? It's
Yes.
like just, you know, it's just not throwing it away, right?
Right.
It's being reused into something else, and I
Which is
think that's,
great.
yeah, exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a green product. It's sustainable. It is help protecting our waterways. It's protecting our, you know, just the time that it would take to clean, and a lot of different aspects. So yeah, there's a lot of benefits through the whole sort of chain of restaurants, cities, sewers, whatever you want to look at. So it's yeah, you know, small device, but it's doing a lot.
So now then, I understand that this unit has a heater in it.
Yeah. Yep.
And how does that work? What can you tell me about the heater and how it works, and why is it important in the unit?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, the heater is it is this is over here. Basically, yeah, see if I can, yeah, I'll pull it out. So the heater itself will sit on the side of the unit, and it has like a, you know, long probe. This is a heating element,
Okay.
and that'll sit in the main chamber. And really, what it's doing is, you know, if you think about, you know, cold, you know, if grease is sitting when it's cold, it's going to congeal, right? And so
Right.
what you do want is grease in the water to always be in emulsion, meaning that it's always mixing. Because if it's coagulating, it's going to get caught. So that heater just makes sure that at all times, if the kitchen's really cold or it's been shut down for a couple of days, that when it comes back up and we've got water and grease moving through the system,
Hmm.
that we're always getting that beautiful sort of emulsion, that separation, and then we have the pure grease coming off the one end and water out the other end. So yeah, the heater is an important component to the overall system.
Okay.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
yeah,
And let's talk a little bit about installation.
sure.
So maybe I've got a unit that's getting old, it's not working as well as it used to,
Hmm.
or it's not compliant and I've got to do something about
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
What am I looking at in terms of simplicity, so to speak? I
yeah,
mean, is it dependent on my kitchen, or what? How difficult is it for somebody to install a
yeah.
Goslin in my kitchen?
Right. No, that's a great question. You know, we designed this to be a really simple from a plumbing standpoint, right? We don't ask you to add extra water lines. All we need is an inlet and an outlet, right?
Okay.
So inlet meaning, you know, connected from your sinks, your dishwashers in, and then an outlet that would go over to like a floor drain or some kind of outlet
Sure.
to take the water away. This whole system is unidirectional, and what I mean by that is, you know, on either side, there's kind of a copy, right? So you could have this cassette or this grease cassette on this side. You could flip the system. Really just depends on the orientation of your system. So we've really designed it to also be an easy retrofit type product. Like obviously, if
Ah,
you're, you know, designing a
yeah.
kitchen and you're plumbing it, then you can kind of really think about it. But let's say a city comes to you, say, hey, you don't have one of these. We need you to have one of these. We try to make it really, really simple for a plumber to quickly come in, easily install it, kind of work with your existing plumbing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
Find a way to fit it under that sink and just bring the pipes down and
that's
back into
exactly
the.
it, right? Yeah, and you can flip this any sort of which way to meet your inlet and your outlet. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So Scott, what makes Goslin such a unique solution?
Well, there's lots of things that are built into the solution that make it unique in the marketplace. I mean, I think the first thing that you have to remember for most commercial kitchens is real estate. Not a lot of real estate. You've got a lot of stuff happening. You've got stoves, you've got prep sinks, you've got dishwashers. So ultimately, having a compact unit, a compact size that can actually fit under a sink is kind of one of the benefits of this unit. You can kind of see it on the table here. It's small, it's compact, it's sort of low profile. So I'd say that's kind of one of the first things. But ultimately, the system itself is really designed to be, you know, I wouldn't say maintenance free, but a lot less maintenance than most other systems, meaning it just needs a little bit of touches to kind of keep it clean. But it is a system that ultimately is always on. And what that means is that as you're kind of busy in the kitchen, cleaning your dishes, you don't have to do anything with the system. It is taking and removing grease all the time as it works. So that is definitely one of the advantages as well.
So Scott, another question I have for you is, how popular is the Goslin? I mean, where might I find a Goslin unit? If I walk into some of the national burger chains or
Yeah.
any other kind of stores, where might I find a Goslin today?
Well, it's a great question. We're in a lot of places. I'd love to be able to like throw out a bunch of really, names of what we're, but for all intents and purposes, let's just assume that a
Are you
lot of
saying you can't tell me the names of the brands where we have our boxes?
unfortunately not, but just not that there. No, listen, this unit can, I've been to cities where they're everywhere, right? I've been to the top of 20-story buildings in the cafeterias. I've been to like aged care facilities, restaurants, fast food, entire airports where the Goslin units are used in all of the food courts and restaurant applications. Anywhere where you're a food provider and you're touching food and you're rinsing sinks and you're having to deal with grease,
Yeah.
a Goslin unit would be likely around. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my favorite burger joints, my favorite sandwich stores, not naming
Yeah,
any names.
exactly. Now you probably got to barge your way to the back of the kitchen, right, and say, "Can I see your Goslin?"
Yes.
But yeah, quite honestly, very likely that you would find a Goslin type unit in
Good to
those
know.
places. Yeah.
All right. So another question I have for Scott deals with traditional grease traps versus what we might, this is the new automatic world or where we've gone with grease traps. So Scott, talk to me a little bit about that. What's the difference between traditional versus this automatic solution?
Sure. So there's a couple ways when you look at the grease trap. I mean, grease trap is sort of an industry term that we all refer to, but traditional grease trap. I mean, we like to say that not all things are made equal. A grease trap, does a job, right? Essentially, it's just something that either sits in the ground or maybe sits outside.
Yeah.
And it collects pretty much everything, right? Your mop sink drains, your grease, all of that stuff will basically collect in your trap. There's some settling time. All the junk will float to the bottom, and then it sits there until you have to get it pumped, right? So, you've seen those trucks that got the big long hoses.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
they come in.
yeah,
They're
exactly.
loud. Costs a little money too.
A little expensive, a little money. If you have that grease trap in your kitchen, that big hose is being pulled through your dining room into your kitchen.
Yeah.
And when they open up that trap,
yes.
yeah, there's I know we're on camera here, but until you've been around a grease trap that's full of stuff, there is a particular odor to it.
Oh, I remember college days.
Yeah.
I remember college days working in restaurants. So I know what you're talking about.
Exactly. And then there's you've got to suck it all out, and then it's clean. And there's a cost to that, right? So that's a traditional grease trap. With the Goslin, as we sort of mentioned before, it's automatic, right? As the grease floats, you've got the separation, it flows out the other side into this nice canister. There's less stuff happening here, right? We talked a little bit about removing of the debris and the organics. It's a lot less smell and odor out of a system like that because it's always removing the grease.
So you brought up a word I want to talk a little more because there's a lot of fear about that odor. Obviously, if the kitchen starts to smell bad and it wafts into the dining area,
right,
that is not good. People put it on social media, bad news, right?
Yeah.
So tell me about how does the Goslin deal with odor? What makes it so effective?
Well, right. I mean, really, at the end of the day, firstly, I mean, it's got a sealed lid, but there's the you are doing a quick maintenance through the day, right?
So daily maintenance. What does that look like, and how does that affect odor?
Yeah, sure. Well, we try to keep it really simple, right? So odor comes from when you have organics, inorganics, basically, putrefying, rotting. That's what the smell is, right? So,
trying to make it real from here.
Exactly. So yeah, you don't want that in your system, right? So I mean, grease itself starts to kind of break down, creates odors. So when you're actually removing the grease from your trap into a cassette that then you can go and dump into your main collection device, you're removing essentially that grease and that odor from the actual trap on a continual basis.
So
right?
this is the good stuff that we want to sell.
Exactly.
We haven't talked about, maybe you can sell that.
Yeah.
Is there anything else I have to clear out of here besides the grease that's left behind, and how would I do that?
Yeah, exactly. And this was the so obviously bits of like, stuff that comes out of the plates and dishwashers, might collect in that.
Yeah.
So, we say maybe 1 or 2 minute maintenance a day, right? We
Is
try to
that
make
real? I mean, realistically, is
Sure.
that a real number, or are you
Yeah,
just selling
for
it?
sure. Okay, here we go. All right, I'm doing my dishes. I'm like, okay, I got to give it a little bit of a maintenance. Here we go. Pull it out. Kind of dump our stuff out. Great. Oh, we see that maybe there's a little bit of fines at the bottom.
Okay.
Open up our flush valve, blows it out. Done. We see maybe there's a little bit of stuff kind of collecting on here, maybe a little bit of things. There's a small brush. We kind of push it, make sure it's still flowing, and we're done. I mean, that was less than a minute, right? So
Sure.
yeah.
So at least not more than 2 minutes.
Not more than 2 minutes from just that general maintenance. And again, the beauty is the actual separation, the grease, it's automatic. It's just happening. You're not having to do anything. So yeah.
And I figure this is simple enough I can entrust it to any employee, I hope,
Yeah.
on my team.
Yeah.
So that's not complicated.
No, I think one of the challenges for restaurants is turnover, right? Training people to kind of, especially when it comes to maintenance of devices, things like that. So yeah, you want to make it simple, right? So you've got a turnover, you've got someone new in, I think most people kind of get like those 2 or 3 things without too much trouble, I'd hope.
Yeah. Okay. And then in terms of indoor, outdoor, I think you touched on that a little bit.
Yeah.
But just refresh my memory on that. So indoor versus outdoor, in a nutshell, how would you summarize the differences of those two approaches?
Sure. Yeah. So this a Goslyn system is what we'd call a point source, or at an area of use. So it means this is really a device that's sitting right at where the grease is being collected, right? An outdoor unit, for example, like an in-ground, right? That may be, 50 yards, whatever it looks like outside. Usually it's a much bigger holding tank. And you have a lot of plumbing between your kitchen and those devices, right? And, one of the really cool things that I like about the Goslyn unit, and sometimes even in conjunction with some of those bigger outdoor units, is, I call it like line hygienics. And what that means is that, keeping grease and fat out of your actual plumbing lines. If you're a restaurant owner, I'm sure you've had to have like a roto-rooter come in, someone to actually clean those lines. Things start to back up.
Yeah, and I remember you mentioned that.
Yeah.
So I have one other question about that. Let's say currently I have an outdoor unit, and I want to eliminate some of the problems I've been experiencing from time to time because of that outdoor unit. Can I go ahead and bring an indoor unit like this in when that outdoor unit's still part of the overall plumbing chain? Does this decrease the amount of work being done by my outdoor unit?
Yeah, it does. Well, ultimately, what it's doing is it's actually giving you much cleaner lines between your sinks and your outdoor unit. It's also reducing your loads of grease into your outdoor units. So maybe, and I think one of the benefits with that too is that maybe you're paying less to have that pumped out, right? So you have a lot of grease flowing into those outdoor units. You probably have to pump it out more often, which is a substantial cost. If you're collecting grease at the source, not only can you sell it maybe at a higher rate, you're just reducing the loads on your outdoor
And it's just
unit.
not making it downstream to that unit.
And you're protecting and you're keeping clean all of those lines flowing into those outdoor units. So yeah.
That helps a lot. All right, another question I have for Scott deals with codes, right? Because I know that different cities and even states have codes around plumbing that can affect what I can have or what I must have. So what can you tell me about Goslyn with relation to code?
Yeah, sure. It's a really good question. No matter where you are in the country, this little box has been certified for pretty much every plumbing code, electrical code. Essentially, it can be considered an appliance, right? So there are certain certifications that it would need to have both for the electrical heater, also for certain like plumbing codes, things like that. So this, I'm not going to sit and list them all, but we have things like IAPMO is a very important plumbing code. UL listed, NFC. A lot of these different certifications. So let's say you were in the middle of the country and you wanted one of these installed. Your plumbing inspector may be, hey, do you have this code or that code? Pretty sure, guaranteed that this little box will meet those standards. We're installed in all states throughout the United States and North America, Canada. So yeah, that should never be a problem with regards to getting installed. If you get questions, Echo is really, really great with its customer support, its technical support. So, there's great resources on the website. Able to give us a call, and we can kind of walk you through that too if you're trying to get one of these systems installed. Yeah. Oh yeah. No, we care about our product, so we want to make sure you can get it through. So yeah.
All right, well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
So I also want to ask Scott about warranty, because if I'm a business owner, I want to know you stand behind your product and what kind of protection I have. So what can you tell me about the warranty that comes with a Goslyn unit?
Sure. So it's a 5-year warranty.
Okay.
So there is very, very little in the way of issues with this product, meaning that we talked about simplicity, right? We talked about, simplicity is kind of like what we call elegance in this design. There is really nothing to break, to corrode.
Is that because it doesn't have moving parts?
Exactly.
Except that ping pong ball?
For the little ball that goes up and down. The only thing that, is the heater. This is the only external piece to it. It's easily replaceable.
Okay.
That would be the only sort of external piece to the system. But overall, made with the highest quality materials. We use a 3 or 4 stainless steel throughout the entire construction of the product. The Echo is a global leader, not only in sort of water management products and innovations, but really in materials. We really pride ourselves in using the best materials, the best technologies in the construction of these materials. Right. So that's why it has that warranty. And we have Goslyns that have been used for over 20 years that are still in use. So
it's good to hear. And I suppose if by some freak chance my heater unit died, you could overnight one of those for me?
Yeah, all the product itself in North America sits in Phoenix, Arizona. So nice and central, easy to get out. We understand that, especially with restaurants, that it's really important that there's a problem. You can't have your kitchen not working. Like, we really understand that. So we work very, very hard to be able to get you what you need so you can stay open in business and working.
Yeah, much appreciated. Yeah. All right, Scott, so I see you've got us all set up here, and you're going to show us how the Goslyn unit works. So I'm looking forward to seeing that.
You're going to have to use a little bit of imagination here. So this red, call it a prep sink, dishwasher. This is your inlet. This is your outlet. This is where you're going to have your clean water coming out. And then on this side with your oil cassette is where you're going to have the grease emptying.
Okay.
So first thing is if you kind of look into the main area, right, where you have your collection. You can kind of see the nice greasy, oily water. You see it all kind of mixed up in there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Nice and gunky.
Great. And then if you kind of look into the cassette, I don't know if you can see the ball, right? It's kind of
down
just
in there,
hanging
that
out
white
there. Yeah.
color. Okay.
Right. So so right now with the water and the oil kind of mixed in, that ball's really sitting right at the interface, like I said before, between the grease and the water. Okay. And so as that level rises, as the water level rises and the grease dumps out, that ball will slowly move up and then close the valve once all the oil is out of the system. Makes sense. This is pretty simple, pretty fun. I really want you to kind of observe the grease coming out off the edge there, and then the clean water coming to this bowl over here.
So you're going to show me that golden waterfall you were talking about of oil? Exactly. I'm looking forward to this. Here we go.
Yeah. Water kind of coming into the system. It's kind of mixing in with all that greasy, mucky water. Kind of see it turbulent around. And then if we look at how about you throw in some water there, Brian?
All right.
Yeah. And you then can kind of see the water and the grease slowly coming out. And then the nice clean water coming out the end. Oh, look at that beautiful flow of oil out the end. Yeah, and it's really that simple. And you've got 98% grease separation out of the water.
Well, I just want to thank Scott for joining us today and teaching us more about the Goslyn degreaser or grease trap unit. And if you are having any problems, issues with odors, with clog lines, maybe there's city ordinances or codes that you need to get in compliance with, it seems to me that the Goslyn unit is a fantastic solution for you. So with that, thank you, Scott, and thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.